thing. Let's talk about war for a second. You are concerned about possibility of a war with Iran.
I am.
Okay. There are many people, though, on the left and right, who feel it might be time to either go to war against Iran or do something with Iran, some kind of intervention, possibly bombing Iran. But you don't think it's a good idea. Why?
Well, let's step back. I will answer your why, but let's look at the propaganda from the elite, from the establishment.
In government.
Yeah, government and their media, and then the NGOs who support the particular perspectives of going to war. It's the same propaganda that you saw leading up to the Iraq War. They're creating a boogeyman, a big threat, mushroom clouds in the sky. I mean, they're reading from the script that they created for their first.
They all sound very the same. Yeah.
Yeah, getting the Americans all excited and scared and worried, and then they could lead us to a war. I think with the Iraq War, they pretended to do diplomacy in preparation for the war, and they're going to pretend to do diplomacy with the Iranians to prepare us for war. So it's the same stuff going on. I oppose it because it's not in our national interest. There's no reason for us to go to war with Iran. It'd be devastating to our troops who are now in Afghanistan and Iraq, which they'd be sitting targets. Our ships that are in the Persian Gulf and air bases in Bahrain, the former Soviet republics where we have air bases, they'd be sitting targets. It'd be problematic for our allies in the region. They're sitting targets, so they're sitting right across from at least the Arabian Peninsula, a lot of our allies there.
Yep.
They have Shia minorities, in some cases majorities, who could, in support of the Iranians, rise up and overthrow some of those regimes. And then just on humanitarian costs, it'd be devastating to the Iranians to go to war with them. They didn't do anything.
A lot of innocent people would die.
Yeah.
Yes. And everything.
And I don't support the Iranian regime. I hope for the Iranians' sake they overthrow it peacefully and create a more democratic, peaceful country, which they actually have the history of. Although the Shah, thanks to us, overthrew the Mossadegh regime, thanks to us and BP actually. At BP's instigation, the CIA overthrew the Mossadegh regime, put in the Shah, but they do have a more Western-oriented tradition, which I think would serve us well.
So dealing diplomatically with them might make a better result than war.
Yes, diplomatically, there's no reason we shouldn't remove the sanctions, at least the non-military sanctions, allow American companies to engage the Iranians in commercial exchanges, cultural exchanges. I mean, the Iranians, the Persians have a long, long history, which I think would fascinate Americans to learn more about and travel to Iran and learn about, the love poetry of the Sufis came out of Persia. There's a rich, deep history there that we could benefit from, and they could benefit from trade with us. And I think if we engage them commercially, culturally, diplomatically, the regime would have less case to use our sanctions as an excuse for the economic problems that the Iranians face. And the Iranians would then be more freer due to connections with the Americans and the Europeans and others with Western values to start pushing for change within the regime peacefully.
Well, you say all this is true, but again, the question is, why would Obama or the so-called establishment elite in D.C. want to go to war with them? Why? If it's, you make a good case why we shouldn't, but why? What would it profit them to do that?
I don't know if they actually want it to get to war yet. Well, I think
there's an embargo right now. That's an act of war, isn't it?
The way I would read stopping the flow of those goods into Iran in order to stop them would be an act of war, if we actually implemented it. I don't know that a lot of the people who push for war actually do want war. I think they're using it as political rhetoric for both domestic consumption, dangerous political rhetoric, and to change policies in Iran unsuccessfully. There are a subset of people who push for it who actually believe it, and I think they do it for a few reasons. Economic benefit. Israel, as another example, the threat to Israel that Iran allegedly poses, balance of power in the region. I mean, we are facing threats if you look at it geopolitically from a growing Iranian interest and power in the region. It's only a threat if we're looking at the old Cold War mindset. If we're more of a non-interventionist republic, in which we should be, it'd be opportunities for us for trade and cultural exchanges and not a threat. But we don't see things that way, the way we've organized ourselves around the globe militarily and economically.
Last question. If you look across the country, I talk to people who say this is the worst they've seen in a long time. I got good friends who are in their 80s, 70s, 80s who have been active in civil liberties say this is the worst time. Well, how do you keep optimistic? If you are optimistic, how do you keep going?
A couple different things. One, I have a strong belief in the human spirit, which means that over time we will prevail. And the time might be a long time. I mean, it might take a long time for us to finally win. But if you look historically over time, humans just seem to overthrow tyrannies in which they're involved in.
Historically.
So I think eventually that will come true of the American people. And I think it's ingrained in us. I mean, if you look at the revolutionary zeal which created our country, we fought for so much less. I mean, what, 2 cent stamp, a 2 cent tax on whiskey for the Whiskey Rebellion, got people up in arms. When we fought the British for some taxes, not very much taxes, but some taxes and writs of it.
Americans used to take less abuse. That's the point.
Yeah, and I still think that's somewhere in our psyche, and hopefully that will reemerge. And also, too, I think culturally speaking, kind of psychologically, culturally speaking, there is a growing freedom movement. It hasn't expressed itself in the corporate state arena yet, because that's growing in power. But outside of that realm, I think within medicine, within integrative medicine, within education, all the alternatives, homeschooling, deschooling, unschooling, democratic free schooling, the co-ops, organic food, there's a growing sense of both freedom from the corporate state in the institutions of the industrial age, and a growing sense of need for community and reconnecting with people. That gives me hope.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.